Well. Yes, I am back here after a very, very long week, but welcome back to the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. A lot of stuff to cover. But let's get with what everybody really wants to hear me talk about right now, and that is my review of AEW All Out 2021. Quite possibly, well, definitely a contender for show of the year. Definitely has a contender for match of the year on it. Yeah, this was something else. So we're going to talk about that in this video. We're going to catch up with a couple other things. But first, before we do that, I want to remind you guys, as always, I like to get you guys some free goodies, some free stuff. So down in the description box, you can check out some free stocks from Webull. You can get up to 2 free stocks worth up to $1,800 a piece. So it's basically free money, free cryptocurrency from BlockFi and Celsius, 30-day free trials of Amazon Prime, and 30-day free trials of Audible. So definitely check out in the description box below for any of those goodies. So let's talk about this. One of the most anticipated shows of the entire year, for one primary reason, but for a lot of other reasons. But the primary reason was this was going to be the first match of CM Punk in 7.5 years, really, since the Royal Rumble 2014, when he was eliminated by Kane, which was the last time we saw CM Punk in a wrestling ring without a hood on at an indie show. So that was the big draw to this show. It's in Chicago, so obviously you're going to get a lot of that flavor in this. But more so than that, the entirety of AEW, the entirety of how AEW has structured itself, the excitement around AEW, it just all came through in this show. It's almost night and day with certain other wrestling shows that you'll watch, sports entertainment shows that you'll watch, and it was like that from the very beginning. We start off with Miro defending the TNT Championship against Eddie Kingston. Now, I know one thing, we're going to get to this right off the bat. One criticism I know is going to come from a lot of people is that, with the exception of the main event, everybody who is a former WWE star won their match tonight. Let's just get that out the way. So here's Miro taking on Eddie Kingston. A pretty decent opener. Miro is very good at being this big brute who sells vulnerability. And even though Eddie Kingston's a big, he's a street fighter, Miro is just such a superior athlete and such a superior brute that Kingston got his shots in, but Miro actually did wind up winning this match in kind of unconventional fashion, but he retained the TNT Championship. Decent match that you should probably check out. The Forbidden Door continues to be open, and boy, was it open. We got one of our first big surprises of the night in this match. Jon Moxley in an exhibition match against New Japan Pro Wrestling's Satoshi Kojima, as the bridge between the two companies opens wider and wider. Now, Kojima is, for those of you who aren't New Japan fans, he's considered one of the dads. He's one of the older wrestlers. He's not in his prime. Most of what he's doing before this year he had a resurgence, but for the past couple of years, Kojima, along with Tenzan and who we also saw earlier in AEW, Yuji Nagata, they're considered the dads. They're the older wrestlers that kind of work with the young lions. They're on the opening card matches. They're not really serious contenders, unless, like this year, they needed to pull Kojima back out to fill in some spots like he did at Wrestle Kingdom this year. But Kojima is definitely still can go, absolutely. And most AEW fans who hadn't seen Kojima before could see that in this match. Moxley being Moxley, this was a very stiff bowling shoe ugly match, as JR would call it, but it was a decent solid match. Kojima had some good spots in there, and so did Jon Moxley, but Moxley got the win with the Death Rider version of his finisher. And then the big thing broke. Minoru freaking Suzuki's music played, and I heard the music, and I was wondering if it was going to be Tanahashi, right? But Tanahashi obviously is in Japan as of 24 hours ago. Less than 24 hours ago, he's at MetLife Stadium in Japan. So I was like, well, they're not bringing anybody out. Tanahashi's not coming out. It didn't even dawn on me, because I just watched Suzuki wrestle a six-man tag match that he kind of left early with Zack Sabre Jr. and Taichi. But now Suzuki comes out here on AEW. It just blows my mind to see Minoru Suzuki walking out now. For those of you who aren't New Japan fans and don't watch a lot of New Japan fans, we have now graduated from the dads like Yuji Nagata, who aren't like really serious contenders, and Ren Narita, who's a young lion. Now we're into some of the bigger guys, some of the bigger guns from New Japan Pro Wrestling, and Minoru Suzuki is definitely one of them. He and Moxley, that was a dream match a year or 2 years ago, I think, at Wrestle Kingdom when Moxley was there, and people were waiting to see him and Suzuki have a confrontation. It looked like we weren't going to see it until Suzuki just came out at Wrestle Kingdom in very similar fashion to this, got in the ring, and they basically repeated their Wrestle Kingdom spot from 2 years ago where Suzuki comes out, challenges Moxley, they beat up each other, and Suzuki winds up getting the advantage. And we found out that this Wednesday on Dynamite, we ain't messing around. That match is this Wednesday on Dynamite in Cincinnati. Holy crap, I'm definitely watching that one. Then we get Britt Baker, DMD, defending the AEW Women's Championship against Kris Statlander, and the match was way better than I thought it was going to be. Started out a little slow, but boy, it did pick up during the end. And Britt Baker would give us a bit of a teaser for what will come later tonight when she hit her Pittsburgh Plunge Destroyer on Kris Statlander, which of course is her boyfriend, Adam Cole's move. Adam Cole is a free agent, so that was a great nod to a lot of fans there for Adam Cole. Statlander does wind up kicking out of that, winds up kicking out of a bunch of stuff, which amazes the crowd, and she put up a damn good fight. This was a really good women's match in AEW. I will say tonight, the women's division of AEW finally felt like it had some life in it. And this match with Statlander and Britt Baker was one of that. Baker wins with her finisher, with the submission, the lockjaw, mandible claw hold, and retains the AEW Women's Championship. We're going to skip around a little bit here. We're going to stay with the women and go to the Women's Casino Royale Battle Royale, which is a variation on the Royal Rumble, a variation on a Battle Royal match where you get groups of five sets, the clubs, the aces, the hearts, the diamonds, 5 women in each group. They come in for 3 minutes, then the next 5 come in, and the next 5 come in, and the next 5 come in, and then there's a joker. I like the concept around this. It's basically similar to a Royal Rumble, but just done a little bit differently. The Joker is always a surprise one. Sometimes these Jokers have been great surprises in the past. Sometimes they haven't been. This one was a great shock. Not so much of a shock if people were expecting this, but Ruby Soho, formerly known as Ruby Riott in WWE, made her AEW debut. She wound up getting all the way to the end with Thunder Rosa. It came between the two women. She wound up eliminating Thunder Rosa. And I gotta say, too, outside of that being a shock and Ruby Soho winning that Battle Royal and now going on to face Britt Baker for the AEW Championship relatively soon, this was a good Battle Royal. It was an entertaining Battle Royal. Jade Cargill came in, did her job very well. Nyla Rose played the massive heel in this. Some of the people I wanted to see have a little bit more, like Riho and Abaddon, got eliminated very early. They had a local talent who was on the show that got a big pop from the Chicago crowd. But overall, it was a good Battle Royal. I definitely enjoyed it. It's one of the few times I don't really enjoy Battle Royals that often, except for the Royal Rumble. And as I said before, the women's division tonight felt like it had some life in it for the first time in a long time. All right, now this next match, I don't even know what to say, man. I don't know what to say. You know what match I'm talking about. AEW World Tag Team Championship match inside a steel cage. The Young Bucks defending against the Lucha Brothers. Lucha Brothers had this great entrance, had their theme song by the rapper that performs their theme song coming to the ring. It was really special entrance, really cool entrance, and oh my God, this match, you know, and again, I am not usually into Spot Fest, but this was freaking fantastic. And all the little, they built this match around all these little moments and paying off things later, and you know, having these little, you know, obviously contrived things where they're all in a circle chopping and super kicking each other and they're doing all this tandem offense, but that's what tag team wrestling is. And this tornado tag steel cage match, even JR gave up on worrying about who was legal in the match. They just, no, it's a tornado. There's no rules in the match. You can't get disqualified, so there's no point in tagging. So this is just nonstop, them just going after each other, murdering each other. Ray Phoenix, my God, scared the hell out of me a couple times. Especially when he went up to the top of the cage. We're like, please don't do it. Just don't die. Just don't, whatever you do, don't die. But he did actually a pretty safe dive onto all 3 guys that were in the ring. A lot of blood and gore. Pentagon got his mask ripped up and was bleeding a lot. Nick Jackson was bleeding a lot. And a lot of that came from the fact that Matt Jackson had a Nike with thumbtacks in the bottom. Now, we've seen them do this before, but this was really nasty. There's one point in the match where they're literally rubbing the thumbtacks and pushing them into Pentagon's head. It's crazy. By the way, not the craziest thing I saw this weekend. That will happen in New Japan. I'll talk about that in another video. But as far as foreign objects in the matches, but this match was absolutely fantastic. The finish was great. The middle was great. The beginning was great. It's a match of the year contender. The Lucha Brothers win and become the new AEW World Tag Team Champions. I absolutely love this match. Definitely. There's nothing else I can say. You got to watch it. That's it. If you list of matches this year that you got to watch, I don't care what fan or what promotion you are, this is a match you got to watch. Chris Jericho against MJF comes up next, and another one of the highly anticipated matches on this card. We get the lights going out, and then they do the countdown, like the countdown for Chris Jericho's WWF debut back in 1999. You know, the countdown to the Millennium Clock and everything else, and then it goes, and they got the same graphics and everything else, and then it goes to Chris Jericho's last match, and then as soon as that came up on the screen, because everybody thought it was Jericho paying homage to his old characters again. He's done that before in AEW, but as soon as that came on the screen, everybody knew it was MJF trolling him. MJF comes out. That was a good swerve. I like that. That was funny as hell. MJF is ready with his terrible tan. I don't know what the hell's going on with that, but he came to the ring, and he is one of the best heels in the business. Jericho comes to the ring, had his guitarist playing Judas on his guitar, but there was something wrong with feedback, or the audio was really messed up. The crowd couldn't kind of sync up with the guitar riff, and they were trying to sing the Judas. They were trying to make it work. It didn't work. Even Jericho, you can see a look on Jericho's face. He's like, yeah, this ain't working. So, but this match, and again, it started out slow, but it started out slow in a good way, because it should. And then it just kept building and building throughout the match. They got me twice that I thought Jericho lost this match or was going to lose the match. They did, of course, the spot where MJF takes the bat, Floyd hits Jericho with his own Judas effect, and he goes for the pin, and we see Jericho's foot go on a rope after the 2 count, but Aubrey Edwards, the referee, counts to 3, and we're like, oh no. No, and the bell rings, and you're like, wait, what? Not only is Jericho going to lose and retire, but he's going to lose to his own move from MJF. But no. Now, if this was certain other promotions, that probably would have been the finish. But fortunately, I think it was Paul Turner came down, another referee, informed Aubrey about what happened, which he informed her about the rope, but he didn't inform her about the bat that MJF used. I guess maybe he didn't see it. But they restart the match. Immediately, MJF gets the Salt of the Earth armbar on Jericho, and Jericho looks like, the way Jericho sold it, the entire time you're watching his hand, because his hand is doing this, and you're like, he might tap. I thought he was going to tap at one point. Fortunately, neither one of those things happened. Jericho winds up winning the match, getting the submission, ironically and poetically enough, using the Lion Tamer. You can say he was going to actually go for the full-on walls with the knee on the back of MJF's neck, but you can see he was losing his balance. He just went for the standard walls of Jericho, Boston Crab. MJF taps, and Chris Jericho's career is saved. He will still be wrestling in AEW, and that puts to bed and puts to end the feud finally now, apparently, between the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle, and more so MJF and Jericho. This has been one of the best feuds of the year. It's definitely a feud of the year. I've loved this feud with these two factions, and particularly these two leaders. This is the way a faction feud's supposed to go. I loved it. It's great. It's over now, and it went out in the best way possible. Kudos, thumbs up to not only this match, but the entire booking of this whole thing. They've done everything they possibly could. And it ends like this. It's great. Absolutely great. Then the moment everybody was waiting for, Darby Allin versus CM Punk. Now, I don't know, there's probably going to be some people that are going to complain about this match a little bit, and I know that the Chicago crowd was being very generous. They were clapping and applauding because there were a lot of rest holds earlier in this match, but it's understandable. You can even see on both of their faces, when Darby comes to the ring, you can see when he's sitting in the corner, like the nerves. You can tell he is nervous as hell. He couldn't hide it. The nerves are there. Same thing with CM Punk. When CM Punk came out, the nerves were there. They're like, this is probably the biggest, well, this is definitely the biggest match of Darby Allin's career. And this is probably it's just as big a match for CM Punk, because this is his first match back after 7.5 years. He hasn't wrestled a match in front of a crowd like this in 7.5 years. Can he still do it? So I didn't mind the fact that the first 5 or so minutes of this match, there were rest holds and a lot of stalling, because they need, and it's on purpose because they need to let, and this is CM Punk, who was clearly, you can see, calling the match. Brilliant on his part to let both of them get their nerves settled, let the crowd get their CM Punk chants out, and then slowly get into the match. And there were some great spots in this match. A lot of it was from Darby Allin. And I think I would say the last third of the match, you could see CM Punk he finally got the groove in the last third of the match. And he was performing very well. He was moving very smooth. The ring rust was shaking off there. And then the match ends with the GTS to go to sleep. But kudos to them. Kudos for Punk for planning this match out. Obviously, like I said, you can see he was calling the match. You can see that on TV. And Darby Allin for his performance. And then after the match, with Sting coming down, shaking Punk's hand, Darby pulling himself up to his feet, not wanting help, shaking Punk's hand. I think the three of them are probably going to be linked in AEW going forward in the future, which is going to be curious to see what's going to come next for CM Punk. Because now, after the show, he is not the biggest name and the biggest thing on the show right now, but we'll get to that in a bit. Another thing we can get to is hitting that like button down in the description box, and while you're there, hit the notification bell and the subscribe button if you're not subscribed to my channel already. It definitely helps the channel out and lets other All Elite Wrestling and pro wrestling fans know that we cover AEW on this channel, so I definitely appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. Now, back to the show. We have got where things kind of petered off from there a little bit. We now understand why this match was booked on the show, by the way. Paul Wight taking on QT Marshall. And this match was exactly what we all thought it was going to be. It was a cool-down match between the Punk's match and the main event, because which was a brilliant way to book the show, is to have a cool-down match between that and the main event. So Christian and Omega wouldn't get overshadowed by that, or whatever happened in Darby and CM Punk's match. But it's standard fare. Paul Wight won the match. He beat up the lackeys. He beat up QT Marshall and got the win. And Tony Schiavone had a lot of great... Tony Schiavone, by the way, on the commentary tonight, especially during that tag match, when he was literally cursing out Don Callis. Tony Schiavone, of all the people they brought back to wrestling in AEW, I still say Tony Schiavone is one of the most enjoyable returns to pro wrestling that AEW has provided, along with all the other people they brought back to wrestling. So, yeah, absolutely awesome. But Schiavone was great in this match, too, because he had a personal grudge against QT Marshall. And in the main event, the AEW World Championship is on the line between Christian Cage, who is the Impact Champion, who's beaten Kenny Omega for the Impact title, who is now challenging Kenny Omega for the AEW title here. I will say, funny enough, this feud with Christian and Kenny, while it hasn't lit the world on fire, because a lot of people wanted to see Hangman Page in a spot, we kind of forget about that now, but it reminds me, funny enough, of another match world title match that happened in Chicago with a guy who was world champion that everybody thought was one of the best in the business, and a challenger who was a good hand, but people kind of see him in a mid-card, upper mid-card spot. And that match I'm talking about is Starrcade 87, Ric Flair, Ronnie Garvin, when Ric Flair won back the NWA World Championship in Chicago at that Starrcade. And it was another thing where Ronnie Garvin wasn't... I would say Kenny Omega is considered in AEW to what Flair was considered in the NWA at the time. And I would say definitely that Christian might be a little bit more higher on a card than Ronnie Garvin was at the time, but I'd say they're about the same spot. There's nothing wrong with Ronnie Garvin or Christian Cage either, and this was an okay match, though. Their match on Rampage a couple weeks ago was way better than this, though, but there were some things in here. Kenny Omega did one little botch and fell on his butt, while after all that setup him and Don Callis did to try to steady the guardrail, Kenny hops up on it and falls on his ass on top of it in the crowd, but he came back from it, and actually what he did after he botched it was even more impressive, because he just kind of hopped backwards onto the railing and did the moonsault anyway, which was, like I said, more impressive than what he was planning on doing in the first place. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty good. Kenny Omega is absolutely one of the best in the business. I mean, I've been watching him for years now. I'm one of I guess I'd be considered an early adopter of these guys, since I've been watching him since he was, doing comedy wrestling in New Japan. And anyway, but this match was good. I won't even say it's pretty good. It was average. It was definitely not one of the better Kenny Omega matches. I may be a little bit biased from that, because this past week I did watch the New Japan Cup 2017. And those of you who watched that show remember him and Tomohiro Ishii on that show, that match. I just watched that match a couple days ago, so seeing this match after watching that one, that may be coloring my viewpoint on this match. But Kenny Omega, as we all thought, retained the AEW World Championship with a super V-trigger from the top rope, which I was scared because Christian's got a bad neck, but Kenny protected him pretty well, and they took that bump pretty well. Christian got a ding. Hopefully, he had blood coming out of his mouth from an earlier spot in the match where he speared Kenny Omega through the table, and we all saw on camera that the legs of the table kind of came up through the tabletop, through the wood, and hit Christian in the ribs. And he had a cut or an abrasion on his ribs, and then he had blood coming out of his mouth, and I was worried that maybe he cracked a rib, punctured a lung or something, and had internal bleeding. Now, it doesn't seem that way, because if he did, he wouldn't have been able to finish the match. I mean, they went on for another 5 or 7 minutes after this. But it was a good, valiant effort, but I'm happy Omega won, and we're past this now, and we're now on to some bigger things, and the bigger things would get bigger and bigger. The rest of the Elite come down in the ring, and they're beating up on Christian. Jurassic Express comes down to try to save him. They're not enough. And this was, you can see how they teased this now this past week on Dynamite with the way they ended Dynamite show. That was a tease to this ending. So we were going to get that same ending again with the heels beating down everybody, the Elite beating down everybody. And Kenny Omega gets on the mic and starts cutting a promo, and he starts saying that the people that can beat him either aren't here, or they're retired, or whatever, or they're not even alive anymore. And half of the crowd got that as soon as he said it, because the lights went off. We all know, now for those of you who haven't been following, or for certain YouTube channels, I think Being the Elite started in 2019. We remember way before, a long time ago on Being the Elite, when Adam Cole signed with NXT and WWE, they wrote him off of Being the Elite as Kenny Omega poisoning him. And that also coincided with Omega. It's funny, I was doing this YouTube channel back when that was all a thing. I remember covering that. Adam Cole's death on Being the Elite and his ousting from Ring of Honor and the way they did it and brought in Marty Scurll. By the way, you're not going to... sorry, Marty. Marty ain't coming in. I'm sorry. It's kind of... Well... I don't know. Some people aren't sorry about that, given what he did or allegedly did. Anyway, but we get Adam Cole coming back. He made this surprise. The crowd had started chanting yes before, and I was kind of like, nah, they're probably going to debut Adam Cole, and especially when Kenny Omega said that. So Cole comes to the ring. He gets to the ring. Looks like he's going to have a standoff against Kenny Omega, and we get the Adam Cole baby. Now, I will say the other thing I thought might have happened here was they might have brought in all of Bullet Club, because over in New Japan, they just announced the New Japan G1, and Jay White's not in it. And Jay White confronted Kenny Omega on Impact Wrestling, which hasn't really gone anywhere since then. So I thought maybe you would have gotten some of the Bullet Club guys coming at it, but that didn't happen. We got Adam Cole, and the Elite are now back together again. They do a fake out. He super kicks Jungle Boy and then hugs the rest of the Elite, so they're all together now. Cole gets on the mic and cuts a promo talking about how he's back with his friends. It's a pretty cool thing, pretty cool to see Adam Cole back with the Elite guys. And then we think it's all over with, and they're celebrating, and Kenny Omega gives his goodbye, good night closer, and then Flight of the Valkyrie plays a variation of it, and then we get a remix of it, and out comes Bryan Danielson. The crowd once again is losing its shit. Everybody's yesing all over the place. Danielson gets in the ring. He takes his side with the Jurassic Express and Christian Cage. They're doing a standoff with the Elite on the other side, and then there's a big fight in the schmage. Nick Jackson gets the brunt of it, taking probably one of the best looking flying knees from Daniel Bryan. Again, one other thing about this whole thing, about the Forbidden Door, and now Daniel Bryan and CM Punk being in AEW, is Kenta. Boy, I cannot wait for Kenta to come to that. We might finally get to see Kenta face off against the two guys who took his moves, CM Punk with the go to sleep, and Daniel Bryan with the berserker knee. And I'm already fantasy booking. But my God, they gave us a 2-punch. They gave us a 4-punch tonight, actually, to be quite honest with you. But this was a great capper tonight. Great way to end. Bryan Danielson officially now in All Elite Wrestling, along with the surprise appearance of Adam Cole, the surprise appearance of Ruby Soho, the surprise appearance of Minoru freaking Suzuki. If it wasn't for the last two matches being kind of, losing a little bit of heat that the show had the entire night, if it wasn't for that, I would absolutely say this is definitely show of the year. Definitely has a match of the year contender on it, and it definitely is a contender for pay-per-view or show of the year. But that's my review, all out AEW 2021. Great show, fun all around. Commentary was great, matches were great, surprises were great, a lot of promos were great. We got setups for coming up this week. Andrade El Idolo and Pac are going to be facing off on Rampage. We got Minoru Suzuki and Jon Moxley this week on AEW Dynamite. We got Malachi Black against Cody Rhodes, Dustin Rhodes. I'm getting all kinds of names. There's so many people, I'm getting the names confused. So this was a hell of a show. Kudos all around. Congratulations, AEW, just killing it. And now, I've said to somebody now, the only downside of this now is now we've kind of gotten most of everybody that has been anticipated coming into AEW. And I think it was a good thing for them to just kind of do it now. So everybody's not expecting it on every show because they've got so much talent now that, as I mentioned before, Pac, El Idolo, Cody is out, Malachi Black, none of those guys, FTR, Santana Ortiz, some of their other big stars weren't even on this show. So there's something to be said for that they're kind of pacing it out, and they've got all this talent now, and now they've got this heavy dose of 20 of the popular 2010 WWE stars. You've got a few modern WWE stars. You still got a lot of the indie guys, your Darby Allins, your Jungle Boys, your Orange Cassidys, Luchasaurus, so on and so forth. You got you got the elite guys, and you got people from New Japan. You got a good mix. And this is why a lot of people say AEW reminds them a lot of what WCW was in the early days of the Monday Night War, because at that time in WCW during the Monday Night War, they had Hogan and Savage and a couple guys from the 80s WWF, and then they had Hall and Nash and a couple guys, and X-Pac, a couple guys from the 90s WWF. They had Arn Anderson and Ric Flair from the 80s NWA. They had Sting and Luger from the 90s NWA WCW. They had guys coming in. They had the Mexican guys. They had the Japanese guys. They had a bunch of indie guys. They had a mix of a bunch of different people. We got the same thing right now in AEW with this mix of all of these different eras and companies of wrestling. I know even on the pre-show, we saw Luchasaurus and Helico and Jack Evans on the show, and I got flashbacks to Lucha Underground because that's where I first saw those guys wrestle. So, all out's a great show. But I want to know what you guys think, because I'm sure there's some people that didn't like it, or some people, again, like I said, except for Kenny Omega, most of the matches tonight that featured former WWE stars, the WWE stars won. So there will definitely be people complaining about that, but I thought the show was good. The booking made sense. Everything made sense. Kris Statlander, Britt Baker match, you definitely got to watch that. The World Tag Team title match, absolutely. If you don't watch that match, you're not a wrestling fan. You got to watch that match. You have to. Absolutely have to. And the show, and then of course Punk and Darby Allin was good. Jericho and MJF was good. Just so much good stuff on the show, and the surprises you gotta watch. It's just so much. People are gonna be talking about the show for the next couple weeks, absolutely. But again, I want to know what you guys thought about this. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, I will see you guys here for more news, rumors, and reviews on the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. Have a good day.